Thank you and welcome everyone. This company I work for is called Stratagilon, stands for Strategic Agile Innovation. I started this business myself in Berlin 2014, end of 2014. I was headhunted out of a job in Maastricht to go to Berlin to work for a company. And on day one, I realized, okay, this is not really for me. So what happens is that you basically think, what are you going to do? And then Berlin is such a ecosystem with lots of buzzing startups and things going on. So I met lots of people, made lots of friends, and they said, oh, could you help me out on this one, on that one? That's how the company started. We're now about 20 people working all around the world in this space of innovation. And basically, Stratagilon stands for making innovation the core of every business, because we believe that if innovation is not your core, you may not be around for long because things move so fast. So it's all about sort of making it the idea that the future is ours to build and the vision around it should be bright and clear, but there's lots of pitfalls. It's always tough when you're building something that doesn't yet exist. You're trying to imagine where things are going. So the inspiration of that vision could be very strong. But very often when we talk about innovation, we have a different image. It feels very empty. People are scared. When teams are talking about they need to do things differently, they get very scared. I think research shows that when we talk about change or transformation to people, about 70% of people's stomachs turn. So they don't even want to hear it anymore. They switch off. And this is a real issue because a lot of our clients, we work with companies all around the world, organizations, a lot of our clients have actual departments that are called transformation department or change management department or change and impact department. Big issue because if some person of change or impact or transformation comes to your desk and says, hello, I'm Filip, I'm going to help you move towards the future. I'm going to make innovation together with you, or we're going to restructure what you do. These people switch off. So we have to turn it back to where it should be, which is should be connected to a vision, and then we can make things happen much easierly. Because the task is simple. It's to make our own paradise as human beings. We have apps now to do diagnosis of basic medical care. All of Rwanda is using an app called Babylon. Rwanda didn't have good infrastructure in terms of medical care firsthand, so they decided to use an app, and guess what? It works. Amazing. So the paradise is right there for the grabs. We can make it happen, but if we talk to people thinking that it's looking like this, they're never going to collaborate, and theirs is the making. They're going to be the ones that have to do it. So people feel distressed, distrustful, and here's our mission. All of us, if we're working human resources, previous speaker, Max, was talking about joy, whether it's called joy or HR or something to do with people, our vision should be to get people to do something fun that creates the future. And if that is the basic essence of what we do, anything can happen. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail is how can data help us with that? And data is the key if we want to switch from these models. I think next year or I think it's next year, Julian Birkinshaw is going to be here. The model of Julian is going towards sort of that network organization where the key skills of the future, your competitive advantages, are going to be very, very different if you work in a network rather than if you work in a matrix structure or if you work in a pyramid. And a lot of organizations still have this pyramid as the premise, but they say they work in a matrix where you have departments and head of departments making decisions, which causes a lot of tension. But the actual work that is done in projects by people is done in this sort of atomium, in this type of network organization. So you have a lot of ambiguities and things that don't match in terms of what people say and what people do. So the transition isn't easy. It's messy. I was going to actually show you how we work. This is a client called Cess van der Haven. It's an agro business. And just to show you, if people work in networks, to visualize their networks, to visualize the people they work with and the interactions they have makes it much easier for them to connect and to share tasks. I think that Kevin talked about how tasks become much more important rather than job roles. These tasks are now easily dividable amongst these people because they know each other, they know how they interact with each other, and they can visualize it really clearly. If we then look at what that does, is you create an organization that becomes extremely agile in the way it's structured without having ever to talk about change or transformation. Most of the clients we work with, we don't talk about transformation, we don't talk about change, because we know the effects it has, but we just help them to create a type of infrastructure that mirrors this type of atomium, and then things go from there. It becomes much easier to then collaborate. Here we also visualized which information and which decision-making pieces they need to do with each other, so that there's no more confusion on how should we make a certain decision. If we're a self-steering team, how do we decide? If we work in a network, how do we come to the right future? How do we create a pathway forward? What are the new processes we need to put in place? Maybe a lot of the processes can be abandoned and we can change them into self-discipline. But we can only do that if we visualize the teams in the right way. So how do we think data steers innovation? How do we try to apply it? It's a moving target. It's a changing game all the time. We haven't invented a, I would say, hot water sort of formula, because a lot of the things that I see in the marketplace is that people come up and say, this is the truth, and now it's going to happen. I'm not saying that because I don't know, but what we try to do is to say, how can we use data to steer innovation? And we can do it, again, same principle. If people are the key, if we can activate them, we cannot activate them if we judge them. Because as soon as you judge someone, again, switched off, feedback doesn't arrive. But if we allow them to judge themselves, if we give tools for them that show them which are the new skills they should be gathering pace on, what are the elements they should develop to create these components of future jobs, we stand a much better chance. And so what we've done is we've developed, with a couple of friends, a data science team, came up with algorithms that check when people go through business cases online in a sort of network labyrinth, how they act, how they decide, how they collaborate, what's their work style. And based on that work style, we can see what are the skills they need to develop to be more networked, to work better together. And then we get this type of graph in Wikimedia. This is our client, Wikimedia in Berlin, where it shows the precise development needs of this particular team. So they need to work on diligence because they dropped a couple of balls. They need to work on strategic agile leadership because their leadership was not matching the actual needs of the development of the team. But they don't need to work on empathy. They don't need to work on creativity. They're actually really doing very well with that. And so if we don't know those precise differences of development needs, it becomes much more difficult to help them. As soon as we know, we can activate people to take care of themselves, basically. Another example here, I'm sorry for the font because it all looks a bit upside down, but it doesn't matter. Klinikum Potsdam, one of the largest clinics in the eastern part of Germany, it's a group of hospitals, have needs for backcasting. They've created an app in which patients come in and they can interact with the hospital, they can interact with the doctors, they can interact with the nurses. But as soon as you get that type of digital interaction, the whole job changes. The actual prospect of what a doctor does or what a nurse does and how the doctor and nurse work together changes. So what we did was we backcasted and said, if this app is live and it actually works, what do you need to do? First of all, the app needs to work seamless. The patient needs to align to new values, and those values are, I speak to an algorithm, or I speak to a robot, or I speak to an app. I show my tongue to the app, and the tongue says, or the app says that my tongue has streptococcus, so I need antibiotics. Recrafting of all of doctors, so all of their jobs are going to be much more focused on patient care, on interaction, on customer centricity. Job skills that you would usually aspire or you would usually put into the area of check-in desks at the airport, or people who work in care, or people who work in hospitality. Very difficult skills for doctors, because these doctors are top doctors in Germany. Quite hierarchical system of medical care. So I'm sort of the top guru of the universe, and then suddenly I have to become customer friendly. I have to care about my patients and ask them how they're doing. No, I'm a chief surgeon. Why should I? But if they know, because they see where they need to develop, becomes much easier for them to do so, and we can recraft their jobs together with them. We don't need to tell them what to do. We don't need to tell them how to redevelop. So in City of Ghent, another example, we saw that leadership lacks in environment and expertise. So it's not the culture of the organization. Visit Ghent is the tourism office of the City of Ghent. And basically, everyone was talking about our culture of leadership isn't really working because we don't work well together, etc. But what we saw was that there was a lack of expertise and a lack of the environment. They didn't have the right building, they didn't sit together, they were all in separate offices. And the expertise, they just didn't know how to manage other people. They had never received any idea of how do you bring people up, how do you bring them alive, how do you make them feel motivated. So we helped them with that. Simple models for job crafting can be very useful to get the right data from people to then do it themselves. So rather than a transformation department or an HR department tells other people, your job's going to change, these are the skills of the future or the métier of tomorrow, you could then say, do it yourself and look at the task that you can abolish or you want to abolish. The one that is superfluous, so maybe the one you can automate, replaced by an algorithm or replaced by a system. And which are the tasks you want to eliminate? And then from that, recraft your new job. And so with some of these clients, we do it on a rolling basis, and every year, about 20% of the job goes. It goes into the bin, or it goes into a system, or it goes into an automated algorithm, and the rest is reinvented. And what you get from there is a side effect, which is really crucial, which is you get free time. Because a lot of these things regarding future of work, digital transformation, will never work if people feel they're overloaded. And right now, almost everyone feels overloaded. Everyone's scrambling because there's so many new tools, so many new things to interact with. So if we eliminate first, the rest becomes much easier. With Generali in Italy, for example, we saw this workload increase. It was going to a situation in, I would say, 2016 where it was ready to explode. They couldn't handle the workload anymore. And so they had a choice. Either they would go back to being paper pushers. This is an insurance company, so there's a lot of paperwork. Or you could say, we automate the paper pushing, but then what is the new job going to be? And it's very much about putting the client at the center of service and creating service models about people who buy the insurance at Generali get a different level of service than they used to in the past. This is very heavy in terms of job recrafting because every job has to be reimagined. Almost impossible to do if you do it from the outside or if you do it from an HR viewpoint. Very easy to do if you give people the tools and the skills to say 20% of your job goes every year, you need to reinvent it. So this is sort of the premise of how you can bring in artificial intelligence as well into companies. This is Stiga, a company in Venice and Sweden, sort of an Italian-Swedish venture, Garden Tools. And basically, data optimization, production forecasting, leading to a total service overhaul. So these machines that cut the grass, that cut the lawn, now think for themselves. They show when is the best time to cut the lawn because of the humidity outside. They can read that data. They can get that sensor information in. They send it back to the production site so that constant interaction is going. But how did we get there? We got there because the people themselves started realizing they needed to recraft their jobs based on the data that they were giving in. So that is sort of how we can use data to reimagine how we do work. And then, what does that data provide for teams? First and foremost, it can overcome something that we all have, which is the idea of the imposter syndrome, the idea of the future being unknown, us having to imagine it and not knowing what it's going to do, and creating an effect where we're thinking, we're not supposed to be there. We're not supposed to talk about this because I don't actually know how it's going to look. We checked, random check, 5 clients. About 75% of people had an imposter syndrome in their current roles. So they're sitting in jobs, being scared, because they really don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So if we show them the data of how they currently work and we help them to develop the skills of tomorrow, we can take that imposter syndrome away and we can relax together with them to make sure that they can find a new ecosystem. The idea before working in a pyramid or in a matrix is that you work with your colleagues and you do your job. Today, it's going to be much more about everyone you can meet on a conference like this one, everyone you can network with, because of the fact that you will have to create new markets. You'll have to think blue ocean. The products you make tomorrow, you probably won't be able to sell. The products you make today, probably you won't be able to sell tomorrow. Have to think of new ones. But if you've been an expert in your own field for so many years, how are you ever going to do that? Because you love your product. You love what you've done before. The only way you'll be able to do that is to go out, venture out, meet people from far away or from nearby, but who do different things and who can bring you that fresh level of information to make sure that you imagine a new ecosystem and new products to build, a new marketplace to discover. And this is actually true, we found, for every organization we work with. Whether it is in fast-moving consumer goods, whether it is government, whether it is NGOs or people like the Wikimedia Foundation, all having to enter new ecosystems and build new networks. So data can provide you a type of GPS so you can ditch your script. Because if you keep on working with the script you always had, you're never going to get innovation. It's never going to work in the future because the future is going to have new tools, new technology, and you'll be stuck. But if you have a GPS based on your own data of what you need to develop, it becomes much easier to do that. You can ditch the script and you can start experimenting and prototyping, which is what tomorrow is all about, experimenting and prototyping. And that, when you take that imposter syndrome away, you give people some tools, very basic principles on how job crafting can be done, how their futures can be reimagined, then the change itself becomes discovery. It becomes more relaxing. It becomes fun because it becomes about building a new network every day. So you know that your colleagues may not be as relevant for you tomorrow. They're just going to be your friends, and you'll make new friends on the way. And that joy is a joy because you know it's not about losing your job or keeping your job or building, growing, like Max said before. It's the fact that growth is unrelated to your current job. It's related to you. And if you dare out to go and grow and you get some tools to do it, it doesn't really matter because you're going to recreate your job for tomorrow. And it becomes a rolling system. I call it a washing machine. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. And when you're down and you think, ooh, I'm going to almost lose my job, you just go back up because you learn new skills. And then you know, once you've learned those new skills and you're almost comfortable, that's where you have to be thinking, I need to rebuild my ecosystem, go out there again, and enjoy that process. Because as soon as that becomes about enjoyment, it becomes much more fun. That allows us to rebuild blue oceans. The cross-fertilization of people meeting inside and outside of organizations allows them to see opportunities that would never exist. I'm sure that all of you have connected here to people that you didn't know before, and that might be the spark of something new. It might be green shoots in your own way of working that allow you to reinvent what you did up to now. But again, for you to be able to do that, you need to open the window and throw out what you want to throw out. It should be at least, maybe let's say 20% of the things that you used to do. Because we all thought up to recently that it was a cumulative step. It was, we keep on doing what we've always done, and then we build in addition, and we build in addition, and our brains just can't handle that. It's too much work. We can't fax and email and network and be on Yammer and be on YouTube and be on Slack at the same time. If we want to be on Slack, maybe we should ditch some of the other tools so that basically we can work together in a different way. And that allows us to create a no-filter workplace in which we can basically just be who we are, and I think this is crucial. We saw a lot of motivational elements before in terms of what keeps you going, what makes you happy. What we have found is that there are so many filters being put on people, a lot of stereotypes. Once you've become a professional in finance, you have the stamp on your face and try to go and work in another field, very tough. However, again, using data to show people what their skill set should be if they're going to work in research and development or they're going to work in HR, allows them to say, no filter, I'm not good at this yet, but I'm going to learn, and my colleagues are going to help me. And again, with a washing machine principle of throwing out 20% a year of activities, you can just bring in new activities with a very different stamp on it so you can become more versatile. But that only happens in a no-filter workplace, which allows no blame, because mistakes are not only tolerated, they are absolutely needed. We need to make sure that we bring them up so people can talk about that nothing goes under the carpet. When that happens, something very odd happens at the same time. There's a lot of fear at this moment in every workplace of algorithms. There's fear of automation. There's fear of jobs going to go away. And that fear is not imaginary. That fear is very, let's say, very truthful. We just saw yesterday GM announcing many, many job cuts, thousands of job cuts. We see it in every organization that we work with. So the problem there is as soon as there is a correlation between job cuts and the introduction of algorithms and automation, you get this cataclysmic fear of algorithms, which is entirely unnecessary because these things are going to bring in much more jobs as long as people realize that they can embrace them. The only way we can do that again is showing them what are the skills that they need to be then successful tomorrow working alongside these new automated tools. They're not a threat, but now they become a help. And I know that I have to constantly reimagine my job, so it becomes much easier for me to work with them. And in that sense, when Flippy, the burger machine that flips burgers in the burger restaurant in California, which will soon be in a lot of McDonald's, a lot of Burger Kings, a lot of whatever restaurants, burger restaurants you have, as soon as Flippy comes, it's no longer a threat, but it's a helping instrument side by side. Without data, is a very emotional conversation to have. But when we have data and we can show people now, you used to flip burgers, this was a little bit of a boring job anyway. If you learn this and that, you could do a much more interesting job, then this becomes a help, not a threat. And our success yesterday, we could celebrate all over and over again, and we can think about how one day Michael Jackson was successful, or ABBA was successful, or whatever groups of the past. They don't exist anymore. Today, we have different stars. Tomorrow, again, we'll have very, very different ones. So the success we had yesterday, which a lot of us are always reveling in, and our companies are kings and queens of showing us how the past was great, it's never going to be relevant because tomorrow it will be something else. And then it's our duty, if we work with people, to show them, maybe through data and through conversations, what will be relevant for them tomorrow. Two skills are going to be key. The ability to network, and I'd say, how do you network? Through the connection skills that you can develop. So connecting with emotion, with authenticity, and the idea, just the mere sense that it's all about taking action now. The 90% certainty before you would take action should be 60% certainty now. If you see a trend, go for it. If you want to experiment in HR, do it. If you want to prototype something new, like abolishing performance appraisals and changing it into performance previews, looking to the future, do it now. Don't wait for all of the market to do it first. And data can help you to create sort of a platform of a sense of security so that you can go out and prototype and experiment. That's it. Thank you very much, and please challenge me and ask me questions, because if I say use data to steer innovation strategy, I'd love to be challenged on that.